morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Welcome you, everyone, in our home church. Let us prepare our heart for the heaven. Let us sing a song, holy song. Page 164, Silent Night, Holy Night. 164, Silent Night, Holy Night.
Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round young virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and sleep in heavenly peace. Sleep in heavenly peace. Silent night, holy night, shepherds quake at the sight. Glory stream from heaven afar. Heavenly hosts sing hallelujah. Christ the Savior is born. Christ the Savior is born. Silent night, holy night, Son of God, love your light, radiant beams from thy holy face, with the dawn of redeeming grace. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Jesus, Lord, at thy birth. Silent night, holy night, all is calm, all is bright, round young virgin mother and child, holy infant so tender and mild, sleep in heavenly peace, sleep in heavenly peace.
Thank you. Next song is page 142, O come, Emmanuel. Emmanuel, I'm sorry. 142.
O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns him lonely exiled here, until the sun peoples in one heart and mind. It envy, strife, and sorrow cease. Fill the whole world with heaven's peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. O come thou day spring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy cloud of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel.
Thank you. Next song is number 4, Garden of Restoration. Number 4, Garden of Restoration.
Father wrote the words to this song, and it's a very deep song, very beautiful song. Hope you enjoy it. In this world they're bitter with hate through the thousands of years. Father was searching to find one triumphant in
Let's also stand up and bow to the Heavenly Parent, God, and true parents. Today is Sunday morning, December 17, 2017. Let us bow to most precious God and true parents. From bed. Hello. Join me in prayer. 사랑에 하시는 하나님 아버지 잠부모님 안녕하십니까? Most precious God, Heavenly Parents, God, and Heavenly Father, true parents, thank you very much this day. Almost the December passing through so fast to the taking a time to the new year coming. We are preparation for the Christmas, preparation for the new year. If we see that scientifically our cell is, some of them die, getting old and die, and then new beginning to new cell coming out. Because we living, we cannot see the detail of ourselves. But in the same time, every day we are a new person, and the world is also new. You are guiding your problems silently with love and truth. We are so grateful to meet you. We try to understand deeply your heart and your problems, so that we can cooperate and participate your problems. Your truth that liberate us in our heart. Sometimes so painful, sometimes suffer, sometimes so joyful. All kind of emotion, and you gave to us. We are your children to become the owner of true love, owner of this world. Yet we are not fulfill your three blessings. We're really sorry. We're still in the process to grow and become mature, and we can fulfill your ideal of the world. Please guide us to have a moment to reflect the week and make a new determination to fulfill our portion of responsibility to be truly glorify your kingdom. Heavenly Parent God, we promise you we love most offer our life to you to be realized the goodness around us, and we keep encourage other people to be loving and cheerful, and encourage to be good, and we can change our culture. Please guide us that we can change the world from me, from the family, from the neighbor, from the community, from the world we're living in. Please guide us, each of us a unique and eternal being. Please guide today that our pastor can reflect and make us to make determination to be the beautiful son and daughter, and we can rejoice with you. Please guide this time. Thank you very much. In report, in the name of Raman and Tamik Montanaro, blessed Central family, 아주 아멘. Thank you. Please sit it. Welcome our Pastor Montanaro.
Hi, everybody. It's December the 17th, and we are close to Christmas. Just 8 days away from the day we celebrate the birth of Jesus. And of course, we know historically that Jesus was not born exactly on December 25th. We don't know the actual date of his birth. The Bible doesn't say it clearly. Historians suggest that it was probably sometime in the winter, which probably meant more like January or February. But it coincides, December 25th, with basically the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice. And the pagan tribes that lived in Europe would honor the sun coming back to life. The winter solstice was the shortest day of the year, so the pagan tribes believed that by having a festival on that shortest day of the year, you could bring the sun back, that the sun was disappearing and that was bringing light and warmth. And of course, if you live in the North Country like we do, the sun is everything, right? And the day length of the days. So they believed that the winter solstice was their offering to God to bring the sun back. And it was a very important day. The winter solstice, the summer solstice, the spring equinox, and the autumn equinox are the 4 big days in any pagan calendar. So Christianity kind of took over the winter solstice celebration. So that in this big celebration that included trees and other things like this which reached to heaven, they took over these pagan tribes' celebration of winter, the winter solstice, and renamed it as Christmas, the birth of Jesus. They marked the birth of Jesus on that day. Then they did the same thing with the spring solstice, the spring equinox, when there's equal night and equal day, right? 12 hours of night, 12 hours of day. That comes in the late March, right? And that became Easter. They co-opted the celebrations, in other words, that were used by the pagan cultures to celebrate new life and fertility, right? The planting, in the springtime, March, April, that's when you plant. That's when you furrow your fields and you make everything ready and you plant your seeds. And then you're hoping for a big harvest. So you want your seeds to multiply, right? So fertility, the idea of multiplication. Also, you want your animals to have lots of, baby animals, and you want your flock to grow bigger if you're a shepherd. And so all those things are centering on the spring equinox. The equinox, equal night. Equinox, equal night. Equal night and equal day, 12 hours of night and day. And so the spring equinox was filled with symbols of fertility. And there was all kinds of sexual things with that, of course, right? And the symbols of it would be a pregnant woman or a pregnant, animal, because pregnancy is fertility, and it's fecundity is a nice fancy word meaning fertility. So they took over. And the idea, they combined it, of course, nicely with the idea of Jesus' resurrection, right? Jesus came back to life. So that's the idea of coming to life, right? Life, new life. So Easter became combined with the pagan rituals of spring. And that's where Easter bunnies came from, and Easter eggs. What do eggs and bunnies have to do with Jesus? Well, bunnies multiply, right? They're one of the fastest multiplying animals, right? They breed like rabbits, is an expression that we have, right? Rabbits breed very quickly because they're a prey animal. So prey animals like mice and chipmunks and squirrels and rabbits, they multiply quickly so that the predators have enough food to eat, right? So God designed it that way. So, in other words, the multiplication of rabbits are a very symbol of fertility. Eggs symbol of fertility. They have nothing to do with Jesus or the resurrection, but they became part of Easter. The other two, the summer solstice and the autumn's equinox, don't seem to have much in the Christian calendar. I'll think about that. If any of you think about that, you can type a comment in. But basically, the Christian calendar took over the winter solstice, Christmas, and the spring equinox for Easter. So anyway, we're almost at Christmas, and I was thinking about Jesus, and I was thinking about Father, who also went through a difficult course like Jesus. And I was thinking about myself and my experience at Oxford, where I taught, where I was removed from my position because I made people uncomfortable with my sermons. And it was done legally. I'll just state that. It was all done legally, although I think there were probably some things done that maybe shouldn't have been done. But Father, I was thinking, to overcome the pain or resentment in my heart about it, because I know that some things were done that were not meant, should not have been done. And most of the experience I had was very difficult and unpleasant at the end, because people don't want to sometimes look at a harder choice is sometimes to stand up for somebody who is unpopular. But I understand that people don't want to do that. So anyway, what happened was I was ousted, taken out. And I thought about Father and Jesus, and they suffered worse indignities than that by far. Jesus was crucified. He was stoned. People picked up stones to throw at him. And finally, his whole trial was a sham. You know, the trial in front of Pontius Pilate was a sham. It was awful. Was it legal? Maybe by Roman law? Yes. By Jewish law? Yes. Was it right? No. It was a mistake. And the Jewish people have suffered for it for 2,000 years. And Father was treated miserably in many occasions. We have more record of Father's life because we kept track of everything that Father went through, especially in the later time. In the early years, we don't know everything. Father didn't share with us everything. But at least several occasions we know that in South Korea, he wasn't welcomed the way he could have been at various places. Religious and Christian foundations were meant to welcome Father, and they didn't. Then Father went to North Korea, and again was rejected by the Christian foundations. But again, when he was on trial by the communists in North Korea, that was a sham trial, a mock trial. They said that he was, spreading lies and disturbing the social order. And he asked them to take off the thing of spreading lies. He said, I never said anything that wasn't true. He said, if you want to say I'm disturbing the social order, fine. Because he was, in a certain sense. I mean, when you're trying to destroy Satan's world and build God's world, you are going to disturb the social order. And I'm guilty of that too, Oxford. I disturb the social order. I do agree with that. So you're right to get rid of somebody who disturbed the social order. I was a disturbance. But doesn't make it right. In other words, just because Father was disturbing the social order, if the social order is not healthy, then it needs to be disturbed. And, Father was disturbing this communist order that was coming in and destroying the churches and taking away freedom of religion and instituting a non-democratic state. And Father was trying to bring about a God-centered culture of love. And he was sharing passionately his new revelation. So he was thrown in jail and tortured. And then he was sentenced to 5 years of slave labor, which was supposed to be really, you're supposed to die after 1 or 2 years. Most people did. Most people died after 6 months in these torture, gulag, slave labor concentration camps. Father lived 2 years and 8 months And then the Korean War broke out, and the bombing of Hungnam, where he was imprisoned, broke open the prison, actually. The guards fled, and the day before he was supposed to be executed, he was able to flee. But he never received an apology from North Korea for what was done to him. He never received an apology from South Korea 7 years later when he was imprisoned in Sodaemun prison for crimes that later on were all dropped. All the charges were dropped. They said that they were dancing naked in the basement of the church, and when they came to the church, there was no basement. There was nothing except one room where everyone had service. So the whole thing was a falsehood. Father was in prison for 3 months and tortured. And I'm going to read today from Father's autobiography, the chapter after he comes out of Sodaemun prison, because it comforted me in trying to understand how should I feel about having been what I consider mistreated, and what direction we should go in as a mini church here that's growing. And I think Father's words are very comforting and very helpful. So let's open up. You can online, there'll be on the YouTube description box underneath the video. If you go to YouTube and watch it on YouTube, I'll put a link for Father's autobiography there, and you can click on it and you can find the page and then resume the video and read along with us. We're going to read from the chapter entitled, this is actually the beginning of the section. This is the book that we're reading from, Father's autobiography, Launching Our Global Mission. So we're going to begin on page 144 in my version, which has the photographs in it. So each version might be a slightly different pagination. This chapter is called Following God's Path with No Thought for My Life. Okay? So, let's read together. Now in Sodaemun prison, the disciples, Father's disciples came and would listen outside, and they would hear Father being tortured. But when he came out, he never said anything. But he was tortured there. And then after 3 months, he was released. When he was arrested, headline news: Moon, sex cult leader Moon arrested. Headlines. Everyone in Korea saw them. When he was released 3 months later, on an inner page of the newspaper, a little blurb said, Sun Myung Moon released from prison today. All charges have been dropped. No apology. No media frenzy explaining that he was innocent. Just a quiet little, blurb in the newspaper. So of course, even today in Korea, most Koreans think that Father was leading a sex cult in the 50s. And that our movement was a sex cult. Following God's path with no thought for my life. As soon as I was released from Sodaemun prison, I went to the Gabsa Buddhist temple on Mount Gyeryong in Chuncheong province. I needed to heal the wounds from my torture in Sodaemun prison. Also, I needed a forest where I could pray and think about the future of our church. This was not long after the end of the Korean War, and just finding enough food to survive was often a difficult task. Despite such short-term difficulties, however, it was important that I make plans for the longer term. We still did not have a church large enough to hold all our members for service, but I felt it was important to spend some time looking out into the distant future. So he's passing over very quickly, but I love the line where he says that he needed a forest to pray. Sometimes when we're hurt, we need to retreat, and we need to pray, and we need to heal. All of us in the fallen world have been hurt. I spent almost 3 hours with one of my friends from early years in the church, who has been struggling with the church for many years now, who has been struggling with many issues. I won't go into personal things, but I spent 3 hours on the phone with him a couple nights ago. And all I can feel is that so many of our members, and so many of you at home, we've all been hurt. And when we hear the truth, and this is the truth, by the way, I want you to know that Reverend Sun Myung Moon is the second coming of Christ. And he received his mission from Jesus Christ when he was a young man, and he spent 10 years researching the Bible to find the principles that God was using to restore mankind. And he revealed them in 1945 at the age of 25 and began his public ministry. So you should know that if you're seeking the truth, please read Reverend Moon's teaching, The Exposition of the Divine Principle, and I'll put the link for that on the website. It's on my own website, blessedfamilysanctuary.org, so the link is there. But you should read it. And that's the truth. But just because the truth is in front of you, just because you hear the truth, doesn't mean that you are ready to work hard for God. Because you have to heal the damage that you have suffered from living in Satan's world. You have to heal your heart to be able to love people unconditionally, like Father did, like Jesus did. That ultimately is what the world needs. It doesn't need truth, it needs love. And truth, it needs both. But it cannot just have truth. So Jesus was crucified because he shared the truth, but the people couldn't handle the truth. That reminds me of the movie, You Can't Handle the Truth, right? But that's true, actually. You know, Jesus could have said that line that I guess Jack Nicholson says in all the, what is it, the Lieutenants, whatever, something. I don't forgot the name of the movie, famous movie. Anyway, Jack Nicholson says, you can't handle the truth, you know. And he's saying that if I lied, it's because the truth was too hard for you to handle. Whatever. I don't know the movie, actually. I don't think I've seen it. I just know that line. But Jesus could have said that to the Jewish people. Father could have said that. But instead of saying that, they just loved people. Because if you're young, you know, you guys are young, right? And the truth is big, right? The universe is a big world, you know, universe. The history is a big history. You don't know all the stories of history yet. The truth is very serious. It's very painful as we look at the truth. The fact is that Jesus was not supposed to die on the cross. There's another painful truth that Father revealed. His death was due to the misunderstanding and disbelief of the Jewish people. They failed to see that he was the Messiah. Had they seen him as the Messiah, would they have ever killed him? They had been prepared since Abraham, 2,000 years before, to welcome the Christ, especially by the prophets. After Moses came and after that Joshua led them into Canaan, many prophets came. And gradually, especially as they became a vassal state of Assyria and then Greece and then Rome, many prophets came saying, the Messiah will come on the throne of David to liberate us. Their concept of the Messiah, therefore, was a political Messiah, a political anointed one, a political chosen one, who would come on the throne of David, on the kingdom of David, and make Israel great again, like it had been under David and Solomon. Under Saul, David, and Solomon during the United Kingdom period, 1,200 years before Jesus, or 1,000 years before Jesus, more or less. David had waged war against many nations and then had won victories, great victories. And Solomon, through diplomacy and marriage, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Most of those were political marriages to princesses of different little mini states around. And he married their daughters so that there would be a political connection. He was very clever. But at that time, Israel, the kingdom of Israel was probably at its peak of glory. And everyone remembered that time as being the peak of Israel's history. So of course they would long to return to that former glory. And that was what the Messiah was supposed to do in their mind. He was coming as a king on the throne of David to liberate them from Greece and Rome and to make them a great country once again, a leader, a central country of the world. God had other plans. God saw the nation of Israel as a chosen people to become like a missionary state. That the Messiah would come as a true man, a true Adam, the Son of God, take a wife, marry, form the first true couple in history, replacing Adam and Eve, who fell. And as the true parents, they would adopt all mankind into their lineage and restore mankind as God's sons and daughters. That was God's plan for Jesus. Very different from the Jewish concept of the Messiah. So when Jesus came, he didn't look like what they expected. He was born as the bastard son of a carpenter. Joseph was not his father, and everyone knew it. At one point in the Bible, when they're trying to mock him, they said, "You, son of Mary, what have you to do with us?" Calling a Jewish person son of his mother, meaning recognizing that he doesn't have a father, would be the greatest insult to a Jewish person at that time. You would be called son of your father, right? He should have been called Jesus ben Joseph. Ben meaning son of. So he would have been Jesus ben Joseph. No one would have called him Jesus ben Mary. But calling him that was a recognition that they knew that his father was not Joseph and that he was a bastard son. He was not educated in the temple like John the Baptist. He was a rough man, a strong man. He didn't seem to obey the Jewish laws, like he healed people on the Sabbath, which was against their law of doing any work, right, on the Sabbath. So he didn't look like their idea of a Messiah, a king, on the lineage of David. And they got more and more suspicious of him. And when he began to preach that he was the Messiah, or they began to feel that he was the Messiah, they began openly mocking him and attacking him, and finally conspiring against him and crucifying him. This was not God's will. God salvaged the situation by resurrecting Jesus and starting the religion of Christianity, whose purpose is to build a foundation in history for the second coming of Christ. This is an unpleasant truth, isn't it? Something that maybe many Christians don't want to hear. And that's why Father, when he came, speaking the truth, experienced much of the same reaction that Jesus had experienced. Rejection, being attacked, imprisonment, torture, and suffering. But Father, like Jesus, continued to love people right to the end. And he says, though, I needed a forest where I could pray and think about the future of our church. He needed to heal. His body had been tortured and needed to heal physically, but also emotionally. When you've been hurt, when you've been bullied, Father was bullied. I was bullied. Jesus was bullied by powerful people who don't have qualms about using their power to destroy someone they see as an enemy, a threat. So when you've been bullied, when you've been hurt, when you've been attacked in some way, you need time and space to heal your heart. And Father needed a forest to pray. So if you have been bullied, if you've suffered, if you've been through injustices, and we all have, I think, and if your family was not ideal, and you suffered in your home, if there was alcoholism or abuse or some kind of difficulty or divorce or breakdown or something that you experienced, then your heart was hurt. And although you hear the truth and you want to follow, the reality is that your heart may be damaged and need healing. And you have to give yourself the time to heal. And you have to pray to God. But in my prayer, I've come to see that God can heal us. No matter what you've been through, God can heal us, because Adam and Eve were supposed to grow from birth. They were created like any of us, I believe. They were created by God, and they had to grow up. What was there around them? There were no other human beings. They were the first human beings. So it was a dark, kind of primordial darkness that they were surrounded by. Where was the only light in Adam and Eve's world? Think about it. I was thinking about that this week, Adam and Eve. They were the first human beings, the first people that had a spirit. There probably were many tribes of humanoid type people, people that did not have a spirit but had a physical body like Adam and Eve had. They were basically animals. They were like very developed apes. But they had physical bodies like human beings. But they didn't have a spirit. And Adam and Eve were born from such beings, such creatures. Because they're the first human beings. The Bible says Adam was made from the dust of the earth. And Eve was made from his rib. But I think if you pray about that, you might decide, and I have, but you may decide that that's an allegory. That's symbolic. That Adam's body was made from the earth. And then the spirit, the Bible says that God breathed the spirit of life into his nostrils. So his spirit comes from the spiritual realm. Our bodies come from the physical realm, and we are the microcosm of the earth and the heavens. So Adam and Eve were surrounded by what? Whatever theory you subscribe to, it was darkness, spiritual darkness. There was no other human being around. So can you imagine being the only man, the only woman, surrounded by, there's no society, there's no parents. Your parents, if you understand what I'm saying to be true, then your parents are basically, they raised you, they suckled you, they took care of you physically while you were a baby, like any animal would take care of its young. But after a certain time, they just sort of leave you alone. They abandon you. They don't have any heart toward you. Because Adam and Eve's parents were not human. They were human bodies. That's what they were made from. So, Adam and Eve were surrounded by darkness. Where was the only light in Adam and Eve's world?
God.
What?
God.
Say it louder.
God.
God. Their conversation with God. This is so deep, by the way. I was really getting a revelation about this. Adam and Eve's conversation with God was what was making them grow. We grow through a conversation with God. The light and the love that God is come into us when we welcome his words and his ideas in our mind. And when we respond with our own ideas and our own thoughts, then God comes back to us, and this give and take between us and God helps us to grow. We actually grow spiritually. Our spirit gets brighter and stronger and clearer through a conversation with God. Did Adam and Eve finish their conversation with God? No. When they were teenagers, due to a temptation of sexual love from Lucifer, Eve and then Adam fell into a conversation with him, with Satan. And we cut off our conversation with God. That is the original sin. That is the state we are all born into in this world. A state where our conversation with God is limited at best. If you're lucky, you were born in a Christian family where, due to Jesus' efforts and the efforts of God's providence since the time of Adam until now, God has raised up a religion, Christianity, where we are supposed to pray and communicate with God and talk to God. But in most churches, our prayer is very rote, is very much by the book. In fact, in the Episcopal Church, the Church of England, the prayers are written in the book of prayer. You read them. The liturgy of many churches is very much by the book. And many Christians believe that it's sort of audacious to talk to God and expect him to talk back. That's a sign of insanity almost. Although throughout history, Christian saints have always talked about communication with God. St. Francis, St. Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, Mother Teresa, all these great men and women of God, and many great, Martin Luther and others, they believed that you could talk to God. But the fact is this: Christianity has always felt that they were like the illegitimate son of God. Adopted sons, right? If we read Romans chapter 8, Paul, who was probably one of the greatest Christians of all time, struck down directly by Jesus and spoken to directly by Jesus, right? One of the greatest missionaries of all history. Paul says in Romans chapter 8, the creation has been groaning in travail until now, waiting for the revealing of the sons of God. And we also ourselves have been waiting for the redemption of our bodies and the adoption as sons. He says that we're waiting to be adopted. What position does that make him in then? He's not a son of God yet. See, Christians, if you are a Christian, you probably understand this. We believe in Christianity that Jesus is God's son, and he called me friend, okay, so I'm a friend of the Son of God. That's not a bad position. And I believe that Jesus is the Son of God, okay, so I'm a loyal person. But am I a son of God? Not so clear. We are supposed to be sons and daughters of God. How do we restore that? By communicating in a conversation with God daily, every minute, having a conversation with God. Do you have a conversation with God every day? You're trying, right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. This is the secret. That having a conversation with God, the author of love and life and light and truth, by having a conversation with God, we can begin to grow. It's like breathing goes in and out, right? You go, and life is breath, right? Breathing in, breathing out. The blood going away from the heart, coming back to the heart. Arteries and veins, right?
Yes.
This is what makes us live, is breathing, give and take of the arteries and veins. The nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, the give and take of nervous impulses going out to the body, which move our body, and then sensations coming back from the body to our brain, communicating the reality that our body is in. Everything is give and take. So how do you come to life? By having give and take with the author of life, the beginning of life, God. That give and take, that conversation was interrupted at the fall. And no matter how much religions have tried to restore it, until we understood what Father taught about the fall, there's a guilty feeling about sexuality that all Christians experience. And until we solve that, our conversation with God is interrupted by our guilt and our shame and our fear. The Messiah came, Father, to set a condition that any human being can understand what was the original sin and can break the back of original sin so that it doesn't have an effect on me anymore. It doesn't control me anymore. And I can resume my conversation with God. I can continue my conversation with God. And I can heal. And I can grow. And what I was saying before about having to heal what we've been through, the only way to heal our hearts. Many Christians talk about healing of disease, and that's wonderful. If someone has cancer and you pray for them, you can heal that. But the physical diseases that we experience are nothing compared to the spiritual disease of having no relationship with God and having a damaged heart. And this is what God is wanting more than anything to fix. Please talk to God every day, every minute, every hour. Talk to God. Have a conversation and listen to God. Then you will grow spiritually and you will heal. The past will melt away. You will understand what happened to you and why the people that hurt you did what they did. Because they also were damaged. And they also had no understanding of what they were doing. And you can forgive them and you can move on and your heart can heal. And you can become a true son and daughter of God. This is what Father opened up, that realm. Is that not the work of the Messiah? This is what Father did, and this is who Father is. I wanted to originally read the whole chapter to you, but I think that's enough for now, that one paragraph. And I want you to, you're welcome to read the whole autobiography. I'll put a link on it. You can read the whole thing. You can bookmark it and keep it in your computer, and you can read it anytime you want. It's a wonderful book. Father's teaching of the exposition of divine principle, the Bible, Father's autobiography, I recommend, and God's Will in the World. It's a wonderful collection of speeches. So, that's my message for you today and for all of us, that Adam and Eve also had to grow out of darkness. They weren't like dancing around in the light. They were surrounded by a very difficult, actually, circumstance. But through their conversation with God, they were intended to grow and become the first true man and true woman, true husband, true wife, true father and true mother. And their children would have been born into a loving family. And their children's children would have been born into loving families. And throughout history, humanity would have grown as a sinless family, connected vertically to God. Everyone connected to God. That didn't happen because of the fall. The only way to go back into the Garden of Eden, to restore what was lost, is to resume that conversation with God that was interrupted by the fall. That means you must understand the content of the fall. If you don't understand the content of the fall, then you will not be able to resume your conversation with God. It was not just a failure to obey God's commandment. The fall was not just disobedience. The content of the fall is more the breakdown of love, the accepting fallen love from an angel and getting caught up and sucked into a twisted, toxic relationship of love instead of staying with God, the conversation with God, until we reach perfection. So I have to leave you there. Please study more and contact me. My email address is the same as our website, blessedfamilysanctuary@gmail.com. blessedfamilysanctuary@gmail.com. You're welcome to write to me, and I will respond to you within a week. And thank you so much for your attention, and you're paying attention, and you're receiving these words today. And I pray that you can have a wonderful week, and that you can grow in the love of God through having a conversation with God. Let's pray. Dearest Heavenly Father, I pray that the people who are listening, Father, can have the faith and the courage and take the chance on opening up their hearts and minds to you, Father, and talking to you and making a relationship with you. And that they can also study and understand what happened at the fall. And they can discuss that with you, Father. And they can realize that the damage that was done in their lives and the damage that was done in our lives, Father, we can realize that it can be fixed, it can be healed. We can stand up again as your true sons and daughters. We can build loving, heavenly, true relationships. Please bless us, Father, to do this. I thank you so much for your love. I thank you for each and every one of the people listening, that they can be blessed that they can be guided by you, Father. Thank you so much. We offer ourselves to you, our family to you, as a blessed central family. And we pray that every day can be the beginning of a church, of a family, of a center that can help thousands of people to find you, Father. Thank you so much. We ask your blessing on this day. In Korean, 축복 중심 가정 라만과 타미코 몬타나리 이름으로 보고드립니다. We offer this report in the name of Raman and Tamiko Montanaro, a blessed central family. Aju. Amen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.